Hello Leeds, how are you doing? Jo Williams of Heritage Corner Leeds runs Leeds Black History Walks, which celebrate African history and diversity in Leeds. Jo has the most mesmerising voice and tells me some amazing stories. Have a listen. So, on this week's edition of the Coronavirus Extraordinary Series part of Light on Leeds, I have Jo Williams who's come to talk to me. Hello, Jo.
Yes, hi Hazel.
Really good to speak to you. We've had all sorts of issues back and forth, but we think we've cracked it this time.
I hope so. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming along. So, Jo, you are part of Heritage Corner Leeds and you run Leeds Black History Walks.
That's right.
And how long have you been doing those?
Right. I've been running Leeds Black History Walk for, this is the 11th year now.
Wow.
And what we have been doing for the first 10 years is delivering free public walks in the first Saturday of the month. And so to educate the public about Black history in general and how it connects to Leeds. And there's lots of very interesting and fascinating stuff.
You were talking earlier before we got cut off about the difference between how it's presented in European history.
Yes, European history basically is one-sided. So what I like to say is that Black history or Black British history is actually British history, but with Black people in it, because the other version is very exclusive. It's like a club. You can't really get in there, so you have to create your own.
Yeah, of course.
To have your own stories included. And as an actor, that's where it starts for me, is, well, where are my stories? As much as I would like to play Henry V and all these great Shakespearean characters, apart from Othello, I'd actually like to know, well, where are heroes of African origin? And consider that Africans have a relationship, if we can put it that way, with Britain for over 400-500 years. There must be some strong narratives in there somewhere. So I set off to do my own research and came up with a plethora of stuff, which I decided to hone down to just Yorkshire. And it just turned out that the site of the University of Leeds' central campus actually holds many stories, which, when you take them in overall, gives you a good impression, I think, of ancient African history, as well as the relationship between Africa and Britain.
Excellent. And so you incorporate all of this into your walks. Is it about the UK as a whole, or specifically Leeds stories?
Oh, well, yes, of course. It brings in other aspects of UK history, but we try and focus in on Yorkshire. But of course, Yorkshire is not an island, although it is perhaps soon to be devolved, and that will be an interesting time.
Mm-hmm.
But Yorkshire, if we go, we have to remember that Yorkshire was very much the capital of Britain during Roman times, because the emperor sat in York. And so if you go back to Emperor Constantine and his journey from York to the east in order to claim his right to be emperor, and he would have met Christianity in Ethiopia, in Egypt, in Syria, and different places before the Catholic Church actually evolved. And so Yorkshire is very central to world history when you look at it from that perspective. I'm sure he would have had a few Yorkshiremen with him. But you also have the Bangled Lady of York, and her body was discovered not so long ago, I believe at the end of the last century. And they've done a DNA test on her, and she is sub-Saharan African, but she was very wealthy. She wasn't a slave. They believe she was a merchant in her own right. You also have, they've discovered mummified Egyptians in York. I think there are over 50 of them, I think. And in Barnsley, they've discovered 2 mummified Egyptians in Barnsley, 2,000 years old. So ancient African history isn't alien to Britain.
No.
This is the point that we try to make on the walk. And then coming up closer to time, we look at transatlantic history and we make the point that Africans in the West Indies have contributed enormously to the British economy, and then through Windrush, contributed to British culture. So it's a larger, wider history than people perceive.
Yeah, definitely. And so when people come on the walks, are they often surprised about that sort of element?
Oh, there's lots of jaw drops, definitely. And it's not surprising that that should be the case, because our education system is seriously at a default when it comes to understanding how Britain has grown and prospered. A lot of people want to keep the single narrative that it's Yorkshire people and Yorkshire people alone. They did it by themselves, no help from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for British history as well as a whole, when that is so far from the case. And if we look at previous civilizations throughout world history, they've always learned from others, and that includes Africa.
Of course. Yeah, it's quite difficult, isn't it? Because I think, like you say, the way that you taught history in schools and the way empire is talked about is very loaded to one side, isn't it?
Yes. And you can understand that, because I think every society wants their forebears, those coming in the future, to look back and feel proud. And I think that's very important. I don't want to take anything away from British history. And in fact, people have said that this actually adds to British history. It adds to British character and the British personality. It doesn't take anything away.
I completely agree, yeah.
People think, oh, you're just going to focus on the negative stuff and the cruelty. And, well, white people were slaves too, and black people enslaved their own. And they come up with all these. Just look at the facts and just reflect on it. I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm just presenting the fact that there was a black woman who was quite wealthy in Yorkshire 2,000 years ago. I'm not trying to make a political point. I'm just saying that contradicts the narrative that Africans have been savages throughout history and haven't contributed anything to human civilization, which is false.
Yeah.
And we walk around the central campus of the University of Leeds, and if I just take a simple thing like an obelisk, you find them all over the place, and we largely think that they're European because they're used as war memorials. But they're thousands of years old, and you'd have to go back to the ancient Nile Valley civilizations for their origins. And outside temples, you'd find 2 of these obelisks representing extreme opposites, because the Nile Valley peoples believed that that was the human condition. We're constantly torn between 2 extremes. And they believed they created a system called Ma'at, which is about finding balance. So you can be, some might be on the extreme right, some might be on the extreme left, but we're all living in the same society. So together, we have to find some kind of balance. And I think that still applies to today.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a great story. Yeah, you don't think of I don't think I've ever thought about where an obelisk comes from. So yeah,
no,
it's good to learn about things that you see every day in your everyday life, but you don't question.
That's right. You just take it for granted. And I grew up actually thinking, wow, look at all these amazing things in this society. These people's ancestors really did a lot for them. And my ancestors have done nothing. I literally grew up believing that. And that's how that's what I'm supposed to believe.
Mm.
But it's a lie.
Well, I'm glad that you're there putting that right to some extent.
Yeah. Well, it's about humanity at the end of the day.
Yeah.
We've all got some value, And it's wrong for any system to teach that some people have value and others don't.
Yeah, you're exactly correct. Do you have a story that is that you tell on the walk? Do you have one that is people find particularly amazing?
There are a few. There are a few. So I play one particular dramatic role, and that's the life of Olaudah Equiano. When I go into schools as this character, I get the children to repeat after me. I think I would like you to say my name. My name is Olaudah Equiano. Can you say that? And so I want all the listeners at home to say it. Olaudah Equiano.
Olaudah Equiano.
He was born in Nigeria. He was kidnapped into slavery at the age of 10, found his freedom, and wrote a book and visited Yorkshire to thank the people of Yorkshire for their good work against slavery.
Oh, really?
In 1791.
Wow, that is amazing.
You don't think of a black man going around Yorkshire selling copies of his book.
No, you don't.
And he was one of the first, I think he was a pioneer in the political book tour.
Yeah, definitely.
He sold many thousands of copies. So it's history where you think you know what's going to happen, what's coming, but it's completely surprising. We've got Henry Box Brown, who visited Leeds in 1851. He escaped from his plantation in a box that was posted to a state that was non-slavery. And when he arrived there, he was able to come out of the box and make a speech. And it was a very dangerous journey, obviously. He was turned upside down for long lengths of time. And if you can imagine what that's like, and not being able to, move very much. So that was an incredible escape. And because of the Fugitive Slave Act, he found his way to England and earned a living by reenacting his story. So here in Yorkshire, he was put on a train. I know, trains in 1851, yes. He was put on a train from Bradford to Leeds. When he arrived in Leeds, and I think it was City Square, the box was open and there was thousands of people waiting to hear this man's story. So, I mean, that's amazing. We've got Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist who visited Leeds in 1846 and 1859. We've got Sarah Parker Remond. She spoke about licentiousness on southern plantations. So basically, she was trying to defend women who were being sexually abused on slave plantations, because in America and the West Indies, no slave had any recourse to justice. Anything could be done to them. And if you can think of a woman, let alone a black woman, speaking to groups of men, Victorian men, about sex, wow.
Yeah, that's an outstanding story, isn't it?
Yeah, and then we've also got Prince Alamayu and many other stories. Prince Alamayu came to Leeds as a student in 1879, aged 18, and sadly, he died here. And Queen Victoria sent best physicians to his bedside. He died in Headingley, but his tutor was teaching at what was then the Yorkshire College, which is now part of the University of Leeds. And his body was transported by train to Windsor Castle, where he remains the only non-European royal to be buried in the Windsor Royal Catacombs.
Wow.
And through his father, we learn a lot about Ethiopian history as well. And that not many people know that Ethiopia was a Jewish state before becoming the first nation to become Christian.
I didn't know that.
The Queen of Sheba, when she ruled, she transformed Ethiopia into a Jewish state, which lasted for 1,000 years, until they transformed it into a Christian state. So Rastafarian roots go back to that ancient history.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And so you talked about going into schools, Joe. Do you do that quite often and tell the same sort of stories and act them out for children?
Well, schools work, and I didn't do cultural work in schools. I used to do equal opportunities work because I hadn't done the research then. And I thought, I didn't know anything about my history before the millennium, more or less. And then after 2000, after Tony Blair, there was a nail in the coffin for arts in schools. And so it's been very difficult to get in schools. So I've only been in one or two, to be honest, over the past 20 years, which is a great loss. Teachers are under such great stress. I used to have great conversations, philosophical conversations with teachers, and they just say, come in, work with the kids. Now you've got to fill out so much paperwork, and it's just made so difficult. And teachers are just so stressed. I haven't had a good conversation with a teacher for 2 decades. It's crazy. I don't think we're doing justice for our kids with all the paperwork and the tables and the ticking of boxes.
Yeah, the constant testing of them.
Yeah, and we really should be feeding their imaginations, and because they've got open minds and great imaginations, and that's what you want to encourage, so that they take that into adulthood. Sadly, this has been challenged, but no, I would like to do a lot more schools work, and I think as the reputation of the Leeds Black History Walk is growing, I think we're getting more interest from schools.
Good.
And I've got a great co-worker, Vanessa Mudd, who does her own nail salon, as well as assisting Heritage Corner. But as a former teacher, she brings a great perspective to Heritage Corner. Heritage Corner is the company that was named to help to tell the stories that appear on the Leeds Black History Walk. So we've done plays on William and Ellen Craft, who escaped their plantation and in the 1851 Leeds census were registered as staying in Leeds. Done loads of plays on Frederick Douglass. And somebody I haven't mentioned is Pablo Fanck. And he's Britain's first black circus owner.
Oh, yeah. Isn't he the inspiration for Mr. Kite?
That's right, for the benefit of Mr. Kite's late of Pablo Fanck's fair. And he's buried here in Leeds. He's a real character. And he's of African heritage. And I've done a show about him as well. So what I'm trying to do is to contribute to the city's economy, to the region's economy, by telling stories that are very rarely heard. They're quite unique. And we get great audiences when we do perform.
Excellent. And how have you found it quite difficult during lockdown, Joe, with social distancing and everything? How have you worked through that?
Well, yeah, it's being, well, you're being denied your bread and butter. So to be pragmatic, I have a cousin who works in the health sector, and I've been able to get a part-time job just to make ends meet. I don't like signing on. It doesn't make me as inventive as I'd like to be. I think when you're struggling and you don't know where the next penny is coming from, you get imaginative, and that's what I like. But I've been able to kind of secure some regular funding through there, and it's terrible for freelancers because you build partnerships, build relationships over years, and you build projects. Nothing just happens out of the blue.
No.
So projects that I've been working on for 2-3 years have now, well, some have gone permanently. Some have been shelved temporarily. Others have been adapted to online. But I have to be careful as a historian about my work online because you don't want to give everything away.
Of course not.
I've given so much away, but because it's you, Hazel.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And I'm sure that people want to come on the walks because they'll want to hear those stories expanded by you as you're walking around the city.
Yes, it's all about humanity, because if there's a version of your history that doesn't include your humanity, then it has to be challenged. It has to be. And I'm just really grateful for support from so many people from all walks of life that, recognize that by the end of the walk, that they've been misled and that they've been kind of cajoled into presuming that a whole race of people were backward and hadn't contributed anything to human civilization. And that is just so wrong. And we just have to challenge that. And with recent politics as well, I think people really want to know more about the humanity of people of African heritage.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of people are trying to educate themselves because of everything that's
Yeah,
going on, and,
yeah,
and we should always want to do that and make sure that we're getting to the bottom of the truth of things.
yes, yes, absolutely. In all spheres and sectors, because it's about seeing each other's humanity,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be disability, sexuality, whatever the issue, we should be learning what our connection is as human beings. But we're being led by people who are mostly only interested in profit and have the budget to market our intelligence
Mm-hmm.
to think like them.
Yeah, yeah, it's very sad, but hopefully we can. Things like your walks are going to give us hope.
Yes, and other interventions as well. The arts is a great tool for intervention. And so, whilst it's mostly history that I deliver, I try to use the arts as much as possible as well.
So, do you mean from a performance point of view?
Yes, yes. So, right there and then, I do the narrative of Olaudah Equiano from his perspective.
Yeah.
My name is Olaudah Equiano. I was born in 1745 in the village of Isaka, which is in the ancient land of Benin, West Africa. And I go on, and he talks about his life. And you really get a sense, I've been told, that there is a real person from 200 years ago right there in front of you. And that is so much more powerful than just relating the history. The arts bring out the humanity of our narratives. And therefore, if your story isn't reflected in the arts, then neither is your humanity. So I'm trying to make a contribution to the arts world as well, to say there are very real and significant narratives involving Africans that strongly connect to Britain that should be on our stages for everybody to see so that we can understand each other's humanity. But sadly, what we get is, Europeans created civilization, they invented everything, and that's all you need to know. And I think, the word bungalow comes from India. You know, I, it's a little, insignificant fact, but I think it enriches us to go, oh, wow, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because you get to see how other cultures have influenced everything that we are in the UK. Because
Yeah,
kiosk as
yeah,
well. That's a Turkish word.
I didn't know that. Fantastic. And that's the next thing. Every time I do a walk, people share information and I learn stuff that I didn't know before, and it's great.
So it becomes more of a two-way street then.
Oh, yes, very much so. So sometimes I can actually feed that back into the walk, which makes makes it longer and longer because people get, well, it's hidden history. So people come out with different bits of information and you go, I did that solves that riddle. Right. Okay. Great. So for me, it's made me grow as a human being. It's made me grow out of the kind of subordinated mentality that I had to European culture because I realized we're all in the same boat. We all want a healthy civilization. So I'm not bemoaning what the money that Britain has made out of Africans. What I would like to see is that that money is used to contribute to a better world.
Yeah, yeah. That should be the way it all works.
Yeah.
So, Joe, if people are interested in joining up with your walks, they could just go to your website and they can book online there.
Yes, Heritage Corner Leeds. If you Google that, it should take you to our website, Heritage Corner Leeds. We're also working with the Geraldine Corner Foundation, who is taking the bookings for the walk. So you can either go on the Geraldine Corner Foundation website or Heritage Corner Leeds website, and you'll find information about the walk there. Obviously, during the coronavirus, we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. So we're doing it 1 month at a time. And because this is the first month after a long dry spell, we're doing 8 walks in July, which are mostly booked up, but there are a couple of places available here and there. So we've got 8 walks for July. When we get closer to August, we'll announce how many walks we're going to do for August, provide the dates on our website or the Geraldine Connor Foundation website. And again, the same with September, because if there's a second lockdown, we have to adapt. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
No.
So we hope that people understand that and bear with us. The walks will be going up to October, and there should be an opportunity for everybody who wants to go on one. You can email me, Joe Williams, at heritagecornerleeds@gmail.com. If you have any questions, any queries, we take bookings for groups, community groups, city council, workplaces, corporate organizations, schools, of course, and our best customers are actually universities. We take bookings from many university lecturers from 3 of the 4 universities in the city.
Brilliant. That's great. And I'll make sure that I put all of the links in the podcast notes that people can click straight through and book onto one of your tours.
Yes, very informative, and I love it. At the end of a walk, it feels like a family. You feel like it's a group of people that you've known for ages, and it takes 2 hours, but I have to speed up because there is so much information, and people do enjoy it.
I bet they do. I will definitely be booking on one myself. I'm really fascinated to find out further about some of the little hints that you've given us so far.
Well, I look forward to seeing you there.
And Joe, have you always lived in Leeds?
I was born here, born and bred. I did high school here, and then I was in the 6th form when my family decided to move to America. So then I did high school in America.
Wow, but that was very different.
I got my high school diploma in Texas. That was interesting. And then I wanted to go to drama school and thought, well, London's the best place to be for that. So I came back. And claim to fame, I shared a flat with Ross Kemp.
Oh, wow.
We were students together. And they did This Is Your Life. When was that? In about 1997, I think it was, on Ross Kemp. And they called me up and got me down there. So I was the mystery voice that came through the door.
I bet he recognised your voice straight away.
Oh, he did. He went, Joe, Yeah, I have a very distinctive voice. And then I became involved in theatre and education. I loved empowering young people with history and imagination. And then I thought it became difficult for me to tell my stories. And that was through a lack of information. And so I funded myself to research African history for 20 years. And then I've been delivering the walk for the past 10 years.
Amazing. And Joe, I always ask guests 3 particular questions. The first one is, what would you say is great about the city of Leeds?
The people, I think it's got a great diversity of people. And in the 1807 elections, the national papers said that Leeds is like a political weather vane that reflects the mood of the country. I think that's very right, because I think you've got both extremes in Leeds. You got you're not so friendly, and you got your very friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents, the part of the Windrush generation, experienced both, but they wouldn't have got along as well as they did without help from some extremely lovely, just open-hearted people. And that really helped them to get through, whereas on the other side, they had people going, where do you keep your tail then?
Oh.
Yeah, it was horrendous for them. But as I say, you got a mixture of the two. So I kind of love Yorkshire and Leeds for that. There is a lot of honesty. I also like the history. I like the architecture. I like the aspirations. But I'm going to be very blunt here. the corruption kills aspirations. So you see some ugly buildings or incomplete buildings. It's because I'm going to be blunt. There's a lot of backhanders, and that destroys the culture of the city. I know in terms of communities in need, whenever there's like a regeneration project, all these vultures fly in out of nowhere, and they absorb the money and stop the real development that could really take place. And so after the regeneration, you're left with something that isn't quite what it could be.
Yeah.
And I just think if Leeds could control that, it's got a long history of it, but if it could control that, the city would be a lot better.
Well, my second question was going to be, what's something that's not so great about the city? Would that be your answer?
Yeah, I think that would be the answer. I love how, some of the more derelict, run-down places are being fixed up slowly but surely. Leeds had a great anti-apartheid movement in the 1970s and 80s, and that is reflected in the artistic representation of Nelson Mandela in Millennium Gardens.
Yeah.
In Millennium Square outside the Leeds Civic Hall. And of course, being a Black historian, I love that Leeds has so much Black history. That makes me feel like, wow, I'm glad to be, this is my city, and I want to show how proud I am of my city as who I am, rather than as who people want me to be or would like me to be. And that's a growth that I think should be offered to all peoples, that Leeds traded internationally, especially with engineering, and they touched a lot of lives overseas. But in terms of colonialism, a lot of the development wasn't for the local peoples overseas, it was for expansionism. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of people in Leeds whose ancestors experienced colonialism. And so it's great that those people are here and we can celebrate our shared humanity.
Yeah.
Because it's not about domination. I'll tell you what's wrong with this supremacy debate. You talk about, or Black Lives Matter or Black Power. It's because Black lives haven't mattered. It's because Black power has been taken away. And that's why we talk about it. But then people feel threatened and think, well, where's white power? Why don't we have a White History Month? And they don't understand that all year round is White History Month. And because people are miseducated, they don't understand. So they get, defensive. When in reality, supremacism kills creativity. It definitely denies people oxygen, as we've seen with George Floyd.
Yeah.
And you have whole communities that for centuries have been, denied oxygen just so that one race could be seen as more supreme than others.
Yeah.
And it's at what point are we going to stop this and recognize each other's humanity? So, the fact that Leeds had this great anti-apartheid movement, for me growing up in the city, with people shouting out, you can't go back where you came from and all of that, On the other hand, you knew that there were people who loved you and who saw you as a human being.
Yeah.
But then you look back in history, there was a guy called Wilson Armistead. He wrote a book in 1848 called In Tribute for the Negro. And it's this wonderful book with over 150 biographies of Africans who had achieved something or Africans who just lived a good life. And so it's, in a way, this guy, I think, produced Britain's first Black history book, potentially.
Yeah.
Sadly, a lot of it is patronizing as well, but you kind of overlook that because he acknowledges that the Greeks went into Africa to learn philosophy. Mm-hmm. You just think in 1848. So a lot of what I say on the walk has actually been said by a bloke from Leeds over, nearly 200 years ago. And So you got to love a city with that kind of diversity.
Definitely. I definitely agree. It's definitely one of my favourite things about living here.
And there's a lot
And
of,
I always...
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's lots of potential.
There is, yeah, and that is hopeful.
Yeah.
What if somebody had been a long-term resident of Leeds, would you be able to tell them about something that you would consider to be a hidden gem that they may never have heard of?
When I do my walk, the final stage of the walk is in a place called St. George's Field, which is part of the University of Leeds. And it's one of my favourite places in the city. And even university students, many university students, don't know it's there. I've had retired people who attended the university come on the walk and go, I didn't know any of this history. And then we get to the end and they go, how long has this been here? And I'm going, well, since the 19th century. And they're like, we were students here. We didn't know this was here. And so, yes, I would say it's a hidden gem. It was a field that was a cemetery, which has now been kind of landscaped into a small park. But it's just so peaceful. And you get a sense of the history there. And it's somewhere I just like to go and chill. And you hardly hear any traffic. So you could actually close your eyes and think you're in the countryside.
Right in the middle of the campus.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I know. It's a walled park, effectively. But it's just so tranquil. And it must be to do with the fact that there are still close to 100,000 people buried there, including Pablo Fank and the great Leeds watercolor artist, whose name escapes me. The Victorian...
Is it Atkinson Grimshaw?
That's the one. Atkinson Grimshaw.
Yeah, I love him.
Oh, he's wonderful. I love his picture of a fairy as well. He's got the candescent wings, like you're going, wow, how long did he spend on that? Yeah, he's a great artist. He just evokes a great atmosphere. So he's buried there, and sadly, a lot of his children are buried there as well, because infant mortality really impacted on the Grimshaws. It's quite sad, really. But yes, and Pablo and his wife, Susanno Darby, nee Barlow from Birmingham, buttonmaker's daughter, she's buried there as well.
I'll definitely go and check that out. Do you know, it's one of those places. I work at the University of Leeds, and people have talked to me about St George's Field before, and I've just never been able to find it.
Yeah, well, most people can't,
and that's why it's a hidden gem.
But if you come on the walk, you'll know where it is. So
well, that's another reason that I'll definitely be coming on the walk. And what will you be doing with the rest of your day today, Joe?
Well, today's Friday, and I've got to prepare for a weekend where I'm delivering 4 walks, 2 tomorrow, Saturday, 2 on Sunday, and then the following weekend, after a hard week's slog at work, I'll be delivering another 4 walks. So tonight, I shall be pampering myself.
I absolutely don't blame you. It sounds like you're going to need that time for all of those walks.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much for coming along to talking to me, Joe. And please pass on my thanks to Vanessa as well, because she's been so helpful when we're trying to get everything sorted out. She's great. And thank you very much for some great questions. And all the best, and look forward to seeing you on the walk sometime. You too. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. All right, take care. Bye-bye. I'll definitely be getting myself onto one of Joe's Black History Walks. There are links in the podcast notes, so you can get to go on one too. The featured track this week is the beautiful song Warrior from Jaayns' EP Push Bar to Open. The song deals with battling physical and mental health, making mistakes, and learning about who we are. Enjoy! I got the stones you've thrown that drove us to be friends. I keep paintball souvenirs, collect them in my head. Hit me up, cut me up, bust me up, come out harder, won't be over. Hit me up, cut me up, bust me up, come out harder, won't be over.
rain.